this is kind of scary. This is something that's been predicted in science fiction for an awfully long time. And as the little kid said in the Poltergeist, they're here. What is it? Well, U.S. scientists who created the first living robots say these two life forms now, they're known as xenobots, Xenobots, xenobots. They can now reproduce. First living robots say these new life forms created by scientists can now reproduce. And they reproduce in a way that has not been observed in plants and animals. In other words, in other living creatures other than the microbial world, in other living creatures in the history of the species, all the species, I guess. Here's what it says. According to CNN, this creature, this robot, is formed from the stem cells of the African clawfoot frog, from which it takes its name, Xenopus laevis. And the xenobots are now are less than a millimeter wide, 4/100ths of an inch if you're keeping score. These tiny blobs were first unveiled a year ago after experiments showed that they could move. They could work together in groups, and they could self-heal. Blobs. Scary. And now the scientists that developed them, and the scientists worked at the University of Vermont, Tufts University, and Harvard, these scientists say they have discovered an entirely new form of biological reproduction, which is different from any animal or plant known to science. Be scared, fellow human beings. Be very scared. This is how it begins, right? We just keep fucking with things that we have no business to be fucking with, don't we? Oh, my God. Michael Levin, a professor of biology and director of the Allen Discovery Center at Tufts University, who was the co-lead author of this new research, said, quote, "I was astounded by it," end quote. Well, I hope to shout. He went on to say, quote, "Frogs have a way of reproducing that they normally use, but when you liberate the cells from the rest of the embryo and you give them a chance to figure out how to be in a new environment, not only do they figure out a new way to move, but they also figure out, apparently, a new way to reproduce." End quote. Did I just say it a moment ago? Be afraid, be very afraid. Now, according to what I have here, these xenobots, they are C-shaped parent xenobots. And what they do is collect and compress loose stem cells into piles, which then mature into offspring. What? Now, granted, this raises an existential question. Are these robots or organisms? Now, we know that stem cells are undifferentiated cells that have the ability to develop into different cell types, right? To make them xenobots, the researchers scraped living stem cells from the frog embryos and left them to incubate. There's no manipulation of genes involved here. This is just a very simple, at least when you're reading it, very simple procedure. Josh Bongard, a computer science professor and robotics expert at the University of Vermont, and the lead author of the study, said this, quote, "Most people think of robots as made of metal and ceramics, but it's not so much what a robot is made from, but what it does, which is act on its own on behalf of people. In that way, he went on, it's a robot, but it's also clearly an organism made from genetically unmodified frog cells. End quote. Now, this okay, call me a Luddite if you want to, but this kind of stuff, really, I mean, come on. What the hell is the point? We shouldn't be doing this, should we? No, I really don't think we should. Anyway, Professor Bongard said that they found that the xenobots, which were initially sphere-shaped and made from around 3,000 cells, they found that these things could replicate. Notice it says replicate, not reproduce. There is a difference. But this replication apparently happened rarely and only in specific circumstances. And according to the report, these xenobots use something called kinetic replication. That's a process that is known to occur at the molecular level, but has never been observed before at the scale of whole cells or organisms, according to Mr. Professor. So, with the help of artificial intelligence, the researchers then tested billions of body shapes to make the xenobots more effective at the type of replication they were involving themselves in. And the supercomputer used came up with a C shape that resembles Pac-Man. Oh, Jesus Christ. They found it was able to find tiny stem cells in a Petri dish, gather hundreds of them inside its, well, let's call it a mouth, and a few days later, the bundle of cells became new xenobots. The professor said, quote, the artificial intelligence did not program these machines in the way we usually think about writing code. It shaped and sculpted and then came up with this Pac-Man shape. But the shape itself, he went on, is in essence the program. The shape influences how the xenobots behave to amplify this incredibly surprising process, end quote. Do you understand what he's saying? I understand the words. The concept is a little difficult for me, but that's because of my utter and absolute rejection of this kind of stuff. I mean, truly. Truly. I mean, I'm all for evolution. If at some point there are new life forms that are going to form on this planet, which there probably will be once we have eliminated most life forms because of global warming, but once these new life forms evolve, or adapt to what we have done, what we humans have done, once that happens, it'll be more of a natural force, right? You understand what I mean? It'll be a natural force of evolution, organisms trying to survive or get a foothold in an environment which they then must adapt to. Okay, and that's fine. That's how the whole thing started here on this little blue marble several billion years ago, right? But for human intervention, creating a robot, or is it organism? Is it organism or is it robot? Is it a roborgism or an organ bot? I mean, what the hell are we doing here? That, to me, is where we really don't belong. I know science will come up with all kinds of magical, wonderful uses for these xenobots. Oh, I'm sure science will. And by science, I mean human beings. Science is just theory. Human beings have to put the shit together and make it work, right? So I'm sure that human beings will come up with, let's see, what would be the first use of this? Well, you have to go all the way back to the discovery that an antelope bone could be used to bash somebody's head in, not that an antelope bone could be used to dig a trench and plant seeds, rather to bash someone's head in. Another half ape, half human's head in, so that, the piece of rotting animal flesh lying on the ground wouldn't have to be shared, right? Smash with an antelope bone. So what will be the first thing that we decide to do with these xenobots? Right. Attack China or somebody. Now, according to this report, this thing goes on here. By the way, this was a CNN. The xenobots are very early technology. Well, no shit. And as a comparison, they suggest that we think of a 1940s computer. And these xenobots don't yet have any practical applications. Of course not. However, the report says that this combination of molecular biology and artificial intelligence could potentially be useful in a whole bunch of tasks in the environment and inside our own bodies. Okay. Now, they say that these tasks may include things like, collecting the microplastics that are destroying the oceans, or inspecting root systems, or regenerative medicine. Your heart is failing, let's grow you a new one, I guess. And then whoever wrote this for CNN, I love this sentence. Listen up. While the prospect of self-replicating biotechnology could spark concern, the researchers said that the living machines were entirely contained in a lab and easily extinguished, as they are biodegradable and regulated by ethics experts. Period. Oh, joy. Oh, well, that sets my mind at ease. Does it yours? Hi, Truth Seekers. Mike Malloy here. As you know, we've switched formats and are now broadcast exclusively on the Progressive Voices Network. So that means you get fewer program interruptions, no corporate commercials, and lots of profanity. But our format change also means some of our radio listeners no longer hear the program. It's been a while since I mentioned our podcasts, so you may have forgotten that there is a way to listen to this program anytime you need a good dose of screaming. Visit MikeMalloy.com and subscribe to our podcast. As a podcast subscriber, you can download the program to your mobile device and take me with you wherever you go. And if you have a friend who needs a dose of truth-seeking, you can give a gift subscription as well. That's MikeMalloy.com. And never miss a minute of the uncensored fun and frivolity.